I've been working in the data center field for more than 10 years. I used to support the government data center, and now I'm doing something similar for the scientific community. On the sideline, I'm judge for Broad Group. I'm judge for DCD. And disclaimer, I'm also a trainer for DCD as well. Of course, today I'm sharing in my personal capacity. I would like to give a challenge to everyone who's listening. Now, whether you're an IT professional, whether you're in data center, network, systems, or security, if you're in IT, you have only one mission. Your mission is to improve the lives or the goals of your users. Your users depend on you. And when you think in that perspective, what do you want to achieve is to make things better. That's why you attend conferences, that's why you attend workshops, because you hope to learn something and you hope to help yourself to be better and help your company to be better. So I would like to give you a challenge. Listen to this. Hopefully there are some takeaways. And if you can, at the end of it, ask yourself, is there something I can learn from this that will help me in my job? Or is there something that I can take from this, I can take the slides and share with my colleagues and challenge them to run their data centers in a better way? So that's my challenge to you. Now, without further ado, I'm going to run through the slides. I'm going to show you a YouTube video clip. So it's going to take 2 minutes, bear with me.
Joshua, you got to put that onto the share on the screen. You can't see the video. You want to enlarge the screen?
Okay. Can everyone see this?
Yep, I can see the dummies.
Okay. I'm going to pace myself because there's actually a lot to cover. So I will speed through some of these things. But rest assured, the slides are available to you. The links are also available to you.
Data center is a building, a really big, really strong building. It's basically a superhero building. They are made from concrete with very few windows, and they can withstand the sun, the wind, the rain, a tornado, an earthquake, basically anything Mother Nature can throw at them. We have 24-hour security, controlled access points, and cameras keep an eye on everything. But what are these buildings there for? They protect computers, but not just any computers. They protect the computers that run the world, your world. Every single piece of technology used on the entire planet needs a data center for it to work. Ever wonder where that cloud is that everyone is always talking about? It lives inside a data center. Not only are the computers safe and sound in these super buildings, but also they will never run out of power. Most data centers are powered with enough electricity to run over 20,000 homes. Is that much power could get really hot. Good thing data centers also have high-tech cooling systems. Multiple chillers, cooling towers, and fans with enough cooling power to chill over 20,000 refrigerators. Now, data centers don't just pop out of the earth and run themselves. It takes hundreds of people to design, build, and operate each one. Engineers, architects, IT professionals, general contractors, electricians, plumbers, security. It takes them all to make a data center come to life. So every time you use the internet, Google or Bing something, send a text, check a friend's Facebook or Twitter feed, look up a baseball score, download a song, or order a pizza, just know that somewhere a data center is working hard to keep the computers that power the world up and running.
All right. I think having seen the YouTube clip, it's just a brief introduction of what data centers are. I think whether you work in a data center or you do not work in IT, the fact is data centers power the way you live, the way you work, the way you play. Whether you are making a transaction at a bank, whether you want to do an online transaction, the fact is all these transactions goes back to a data center. That is why data centers are that important to us. And that's also why data centers are considered as essential services. Now, this is not a technical seminar, but I just want to share some brief ideas. The more you know, the more equipped you are when you want to talk to your facilities manager, when you want to talk to your data center manager. And I think a lot of us aspire to be CIO. I'm sure a lot of you aspire to be CIOs very soon. And I think a CIO doesn't just need to know the IT, he also needs to understand the data center, which is very often under his care. So what makes up a data center? Now, some of the key components: real estate, brick and mortar, mechanical, electrical, fire protection, fuel, telecoms. So all these things makes up the shell. And within the shell, you have the IT equipment, you have the telecoms. And data centers also supports a vast array of customers. I think the customers that I think I want to mention, in particular, government. Without data centers, there is no government. Without data centers, there is no financial services, because all of the services runs online. Without data centers, there's no telecom, so there's no phone line as well. ICT services, so forth and so forth. But in order to run data centers, you need all sorts of talents in various roles. I think you would see tens of dozens in the org chart, but let's talk about some of the key roles: facilities, IT, network, physical security, and more often than not, you need remote hands as well. So this is a question I would like you to ask yourself. I'm a driver, so I'm always very worried, is my car in a good working condition? That's why I send my car for servicing every year. But you think about it, what happens if you are driving, while you're in the car the car is moving, and something happens to the car? What happens to the passenger? It's a very scary thought. But that is what IT is about. It's about flying a plane and building the plane at the same time. It's about driving the car. At the same time, when you drive the car, you need to make sure that the car is in good working condition. Sometimes you need to work on the car while you drive the car. If you take a look at all the online articles, you would see that in the past months, there's been a burst of fire in terms of online activity. That has happened in the subsea range, that has happened with the telecoms, that has happened with the data centers as well. So just two particular statistics that will give you some perspective. 1,900% increase for Zoom. 1,900. That's a huge number. If you talk about Microsoft Teams, there's a particular statistics for Italy. 775%. Imagine if your car used to sit 4 persons, and now you need to sit 40 people in the same car. That's what's happening. That is why data center operators need to be at the top form to make sure that while a car that used to sit 4 persons now sits 40 persons, we need the car to continue to drive. And that's a huge challenge. Now, today's contactless and socially distanced response is based on capabilities that we developed yesterday. So if you look at a lot of the measures which are being rolled out, you cannot develop it today. You need to develop it yesterday so that you can use it today. And the good thing being, I think if you work with various disciplines in various roles in IT, the most paranoid people tend to be your data center facilities people, the most paranoid, because they have to ask themselves, what if it fails? Why should I have a UPS? Because my electrical grid may fail. Why do I need aircon? Because my equipment may fail if it's too hot or too cold. By the way, if you hear noise at the background, it's because I'm a parent and I have very naughty children. So bear with me on that. Because of that paranoia that data center operators have, and because we need to commit to 5 nines, or maybe more than 5 nines, 99.99999%. I know of someone who actually put in, I want 100%. 99.99999 is not good enough for me. But how do you achieve that? The only way is paranoia. you need to do above and beyond what makes sense to you. That's why you need gensets for 2 diverse feeds. You need transformers for 2 diverse feeds. You need MDF for 2 diverse feeds. Even the equipment that you buy, you always insist that you have diverse power supply units. And sometimes when you get an equipment from a certain provider that only comes with 1 power supply unit, you make the effort to procure an automatic transfer switch so that it can benefit from source A and source B. But all of this comes from very detailed planning. And it all boils down to the way you think, the way you plan. Now, I'm going to show you a particular data center. There are many data centers throughout the world, but I think this particular one does a very good job in terms of its virtual tour. Okay, just to be sure, can everyone see this? I assume can, because no one's telling me cannot.
I can see. You want to enlarge the screen, Joshua?
Okay. Okay, better?
Yep, better.
Okay. Okay, this is a particular campus in Northern Virginia for core site. And even though I'm unable to bring you on a tour, but this virtual tour will give you an idea of what a data center might look like. So going to the main lobby, this is very normal. There's a lounge for the customers. Again, this is space for the customers. So as a customer is there, he's able to sit down, he's able to have pantry resources, he's able to have a table to do some work. This is the same. Any commercial building will have the same, hotel will have the same. But where does it become a little different? The MDF room. And this MDF room gives you a good idea of what we have. Okay, bad. Sorry. Okay. Okay, sorry. MDF room. MDF rooms are out of bounds for most customers, but certain customers, if you're green, if you're red, you need to lay certain connectivity. That's why the MDF room is very important. So certain customers actually want to see this. These are your precision air conditioning units. And you notice that there's certain spaces up here. I think for those who are familiar, you understand why that's the case. Because hot air rises, it goes past the ceiling, and then the hot air is then able to be ducted back into the aircon units. Your loading bay, which is very important, because you always need to have an ability to deliver your IT equipment, put it into a cargo lift, and bring it up. And sometimes beyond that, you need to bring in certain M&E equipment as well. Switchgear. The UPSs. The chiller units. Again, even if you don't run a data center, it's always good to know. The more you know, the less uncertainty you have. So when you want to respond to certain situations, you're more prepared. The generators. This is your server room. Typically, a lot of server rooms are empty because they want to sell to you wholesale, which means that when you take the whole floor, you can retrofit it based on your preference. Okay, having seen the tour, you notice that you don't see anybody there. And I think it's intentional. In the past months, because of COVID-19, a lot of us have had to adapt. We have had to change our strategies. Now, how is that affecting data center operators? For one, we have to deal with reduced staff strength. If some of you may recall, on the 20th of April, there was the precautionary stay-at-home order. And that made a huge impact because a lot of data center operators rely on third-party vendors. And these third-party vendors, very often, they have their work pass holders, their S pass holders, and even for myself, a lot of my outsourced staff are Malaysians staying in Malaysia. So on the 20th of April, when the stay-at-home order was issued, we scrambled over the weekend. We were worried that there wouldn't be enough staff the next day. And that was a very real problem for us. Prior to that, on the 18th of March, when there was a lockdown of the Malaysian borders, we were hit very badly as well. But somehow we managed because we cannot give up. If we give up, if we don't overcome problems, it means that our customers will not be able to deliver, they will not be able to function. So we are behind the curtains doing the things we need to do so that our customers are able to perform their function. For example, I'm not a scientist. I wanted to be a scientist when I was very young, but I'm not a scientist. But I support scientists. If I do not do what I do, scientists will not be able to do what they do. In the same way, you may be a network engineer, you may be a systems engineer, you may be storage, you may be a security officer, you may be facilities. You may not do that particular job that you wish you did, but the fact is, if all of us, if we did not contribute, the show will not be able to carry on. So all of us, we are doing our part to make sure that our companies can serve the lives of our citizens. So I just want to put things in perspective. And because we have Malaysians who cannot come back, because we have work pass holders who cannot come back, we have S pass holders who cannot come back. Imagine that. And then we have to conform to team A and team B. So if I had 100 staff, I'm now left with maybe 70, maybe 60. And then I have to divide the ones who are left to team A and team B. How do we survive? I don't know how I survived, but we did because we cannot give up. We will find a way, no matter how hard it is. And with reduced staff strength, we also have to contend with reduced on-site presence. So for the staff who can work, we are mindful that access must be on a need basis. If you follow the guidelines from MOM, the guidelines from MTI, the guidelines from BCA, the guidelines from MOH. Access on a need basis that reduces the amount of social contact, deferring of non-essential activities, which we'll talk about later as well. Something interesting, for the past few weeks, I have hosted quite a few Zoom calls with different friends, some of them from data centers. And something interesting is that we're now seeing a lot more data center operators moving into virtual siting and even virtual commissioning. Now, what does that mean? Just now, you took a look at the virtual data center campus tour. Because customers will want to see the data center before they decide to host, before they decide to buy, before they decide to invest. Now let's put it in context. If you were to put your life savings to buy a condominium, your life savings, and this is where you're going to house your crown jewels, your family, would you want to take a look at the condominium? Would you want to take a look at the surrounding area to be sure that it suits your needs? So customers think this way because they're going to spend millions of dollars. So prior to that, they need to see. That has always been the tradition. But because of COVID-19, I think operators are aware that we need to safeguard the interests of our customers and to safeguard the interests of our own staff as well. So how do we minimize that? We defer non-essential activities. We insist that access is on a need basis, which means you have to request in advance. And things that we can do away with would be visits from customers. So virtual siting is becoming popular. We've also heard of virtual commissioning of equipment. So it used to be that a lot of us will fly to Shenzhen or we'll fly to Italy. Why? Because we are going to commission certain crack units, UPSs. So we need to see the testing at the factory. Once we're satisfied, we ship the equipment over before we do another round of testing. But due to COVID-19, that is no longer possible. So if you talk to certain manufacturers, what they are actually asking you to do is that the testing is still at the testing is still at the factory, but they will allow you to site the testing remotely through camera. They put in a sensor so that you can get the same raw data as you would if you were standing in a factory in Shenzhen or in Italy or in the States, for example. Same for commissioning as well. There's been an increase in the request for remote hands, meaning that it used to be that the customer would send its own staff to the site to perform certain IT work. But because we want to minimize social contact, we are encouraging customers to raise the request through us, and we will deploy someone who's already on site to do the work for them. So you can monitor the equipment remotely, you can automate some of these things, and you can use dedicated staff who are on site to do some of this work. So all of this is simply to reduce your on-site presence. So perhaps it used to be you have 10 persons at the campus, maybe you can reduce that to 3, maybe to 2, as far as possible. Now I'm gonna play another clip because I want to put things in context. Just bear me for a while.
For her job.
Okay, everyone can see this? Not full screen.
And would force returning citizens into government quarantine, she talked to her family about the risks of staying for her job.
然后过后我就问我老公，这样我还要继续做还是回？他讲如果是去中心隔离，他就叫我这样就不要做了回去，因为怕去隔离中心，等一下怕自己没有事情啊，弄到有事情。我明天再回去啊？啊？
哎呦！那你看到要出来之前，要到之前要打给我啦，晚上就在家，再出去载你。
Yumi got out just before Malaysia instituted the mandatory quarantine rules, crossing a border that's normally one of the world's busiest, alone, by foot.
I think it's important to remind ourselves that data centers are run primarily by people. A lot of things are automated. There's a lot of metering. There's a lot of automation. There's a lot of remote services running at the back. But at the end of the day, it's a very complex machine. The only way it can run properly is if you have tens of dozens of people running around the data center, making sure that things are well oiled. Same thing as a car, same thing as a plane. Would you be able to fly a plane if there's no human staff doing the maintenance, doing the checks, making sure that all the instrumentation is doing what it's supposed to do? So I just want everyone to pause and take stock of that. Data centers are ultimately about people. And when we talk about people, it's not just the customers, it's also your facilities, your IT, your network. All of them are running behind the curtain, but making sure that everything works the way it's supposed to. And interestingly, if you talk to the Uptime Institute, they've done some studies. And in their latest survey, they pose this question: what is the number one risk that COVID-19 poses to your organization's critical IT services? The number one answer: reduced level of IT infrastructure operation staff. The risk of the human element failing is far more than the element of equipment failure, construction delays. That is the first thing that operators are concerned with. I need to have enough staff to do what I need to do. But in the same time, a lot of the staff can no longer come back. And that poses a huge challenge to us. In the same way, they pose this question: what are the top 3 risks that COVID-19 poses to your organization's critical infrastructure operations? Top on the list, again, reduced level of IT infrastructure operation staff. Recently, I read a very interesting article by, I think, Data Center Frontier, and I thought this particular quote is very meaningful to us. We need to provide flexibility to our employees as well as our customers in the way they interface with us and the way we support their requirements for flexibility in their own business. Because we know that customers are having a tough time, we need to be more accommodating. Okay, that kind of scared me. So we need to be mindful that customers are also humans and they are facing certain challenges. But our own staff, our own employers are also facing challenges. So we need to be flexible, not just outwardly, but also inwardly. Data center operators are always in a very stressful situation. It's no different from fighting a war. I've been in situations where I go to the toilet, I see staff who cry. Not my current company, of course, but I see staff who cry. I see staff who decide to quit. I've been in a very interesting situation where I attended this workshop and this particular person shared to the audience. He's been working for 15 years in a very stressful environment. One day he came home and he noticed that his wife and kids are gone. They're gone because he's been taking a lot of stress, coming home and passing that stress at work to his loved ones. And one day the family decided they will have a better life without him. It is what it is. Data center operators like to hire ex-military people. If you go to China, if you go to US, you will find that ex-military actually form a disproportionate number of staff that they hire, because these people are very accustomed to dealing with stress. They're very accustomed to dealing with crisis. And in data center operations, all sorts of crises are possible. Okay. All right. Is there someone we need to mute? Yeah. Okay. Now, sorry about that. Now, I'm just going to run through the rest of the slides because I want to give you time for the audience to ask some questions. All right. Few things that I'm going to share, and all of this is publicly available on the internet. So for example, if you refer to the Ministry of Manpower, there are requirements for safe management measures after circuit breaker. I'm basically summing them up. All right, I don't speak on their behalf. It's all on the internet. Safe management measures, reduce physical interactions, ensure safe distancing, contact tracing, PPE and personal hygiene, health checks. You don't need to be a data center. Whatever business you are in, you need to do this. And I think if you work in a data center environment, you are very familiar with Murphy's Law. All sorts of problems will appear. Staff will fall sick. UPSs will fail. Electrical grids can go down. There can be electrical fires. There can be explosions. Some of these accidents could be fatal. So we are dealing with not just our customers' crown jewels, we're dealing with human lives. Because we're dealing with human lives, we have to be very paranoid. We have to be very intentional. We have to be very deliberate. We have to plan what we need to do. Because when the crisis comes, there's no time to react. And that is why I just want to paraphrase something I read recently. All lessons are repeated until they are learned. And it's true for data center operators. You cannot afford to make the same mistake twice. So you need to always think, does it make sense? Are the assumptions correct? Is there a better way for me to do this to reduce the risk? Because imagine, data center operators are no different from childcare center. The parent puts his most precious asset at your house, the childcare center. He wants to know that you will do everything humanly possible to protect his child. That has to be the mentality. In fact, that is the same mentality when soldiers go to war. Do whatever it takes, don't cut corners. So that has always been the mentality. But during COVID-19, that has become a little more challenging. So I'm gonna show some very interesting materials. These are not from me. Again, this is in the public internet. I don't own them. Of course, if you have queries on some of these advisories, you need to approach the right persons. So for example, IMDA recently issued a very interesting advisory. It applies for ICT services. It applies for data center operations as well. The link is there. You can refer to it after this session. I'm just going to run you through some of the screenshots, but of course, I leave it to you to read through it. Data centers have additional requirements such as the daily operations, which includes access by personnel, by different parties, and because data centers tend to have diverse customers, how do you deal with that? So they need to think through it. As far as possible, operators should minimize on-site work. And that means they should postpone all non-essential maintenance and projects. Now, is this an instruction or is this a guideline? Again, this doesn't come from me. You can always check with IMDA. Another interesting part of it, para 19, plan for redundant operations by creating teams of mission critical staff. But what's interesting is that they are hinting to you that if you split into your team A and team B, you also need to be mindful what are the skill sets of the persons in each team. So team A, if they're on site, can they handle all the situations? So you need to make sure that you pick the right persons to be in the right team. For work that is being carried out by different specialists, certain things to be taken into consideration. No cross-deployment of employees to different teams as far as possible. And again, they keep highlighting this. Only allow scheduled employees and visitors into the data center. Eliminate all unnecessary access and visits for customers and vendors. Again, when I talk to many friends, be it in the ICT security side or even in data center operations, we're always mindful that this is not just a job. It's not just a job to us. We're here to serve our customers. We're here to make sure that they in turn can survive. They in turn can do what they need to do to serve our citizens. That's why it's not just a job. It's more than that. When I put my children at a childcare center, It's not just a job to my childcare center workers. This is their life. In the same way, data centers, these are our lives as well. This is an advisory from BCA, and I thought it's a useful reference. Interestingly, they made this certain point. Use of ultraviolet germicidal irradiation. So if you are in a particular building and you have your UVC available, BCA is telling you very blatantly, you should make use of it. If you'd like to know more, I strongly encourage you to go to this link, take a look. There's a lot of advisories, very well written, and Uptime Institute does a lot of good work in this space, be it in terms of social distancing, operational concerns. I think they've done very, very detailed. Given the amount of time we have, I'm not going to go through all of it, but I would encourage you to take a look after this. And I think there are some very interesting things like what can you do for equipment maintenance? What can you do for remote monitoring? Now, moving forward, we have gone past the circuit breaker period, but we are still in the midst of a war. In the midst of a war, we expect casualties, but as soldiers, we cannot give up. As people who support mission-critical services, we cannot give up. When we give up, if we do a bad job, when services goes down, the impact is not just to us, it's not just to our customers, it's to their customers as well. Imagine if you serve a government and the government goes down because of you. If you are serving the compute for a hospital and the hospital goes down because of you. Or perhaps you're supporting research and because your data center goes down, the hard work that they go into doing good work in research, hopefully maybe finding a cure for something important. That's the impact. So there are a lot of things that are still to concern to us. We need to take this very seriously. So moving forward, we have to be deliberate, we have to be intentional and think how can we improve on things and to minimize that risk of things going down. Contracts, do we need to phrase our contracts differently? Maybe, maybe not. I think some of us will start to think about sourcing locally. And that means that if I'm going to have difficulty getting equipment from elsewhere because of shipping problems, because of cross-border problems, I need to think about my supply chain issues. I need to think about automation as far as possible. I need to think about talent because once I move into team A, team B, I cannot depend on one guru. That one guru can't come to work next week. Or maybe that one guru may be quarantined and then you're screwed. So you have to think seriously about having adequate talent and having redundancy of that talent as well. And I think moving forward, there's going to be a lot of new scenarios that are being planned for. I would like you to reframe what you think about IT. If you're an IT service provider or if you're a data center operator, we are not in the space of delivering a service. We're not in the space of delivering just racks of real estate or power or cooling. Ultimately, what we are trying to do is to deliver peace of mind. Because when we do a good job, our customers, some who may be governments, some may be hospitals, some may be essential services, they can focus their attention on doing their job well. So we have to do our job well in order for them to do their job well. If you would like to give some feedback, you're too shy to do it later, you can write into me. You can add me on LinkedIn. Usually I don't entertain add-ons, but I think for this occasion I will. And I'll be glad to answer any questions you may have. This is an ongoing conversation. I would encourage you to take the slides, share with your colleagues if they would like to. And I think let's open the floor to some Q&A. I've not read whatever is in the chat, but Tuket, do you see any questions that I should try to answer in the remainder amount of time we are left?
I think there's a question from Henry, but he asked about how did you overcome that problem, which I'm trying to ask him specifically.
Which problem? Which problem?
Yeah, so I do not know. Maybe Henry,
Henry, you want to unmute yourself and say something?
Yeah, Henry.
Count down to 5.
While waiting for Henry, maybe we can hear from the rest. If you have any burning questions on what can be done during this COVID-19 for data centers. If you don't have any question, maybe I start with the first question, Joshua.
Yeah, sure.
Because you know what, I saw about we all love McDonald's. When McDonald's was closed because the service team actually moved to different brand outlets, right? The same group of people, they went to the different outlets. So when these staff were being confirmed with positive, McDonald's got no choice but to close all the outlets.
That's right.
Now, my question would be, if we have data center maintenance team from the outsourced team, how can the data center be well maintained, and whether this maintenance team ensure that they only go to these 1-2 data centers? Otherwise, it's going to be very chaotic.
Okay, I'm gonna give you a very strange answer. Then you think about whether it makes sense to you.
Yep.
I used to work for another organization, which was considered mission critical, and we needed to go to Batam. Almost 100 of us. So we were sent out in dispatches across the sea. I think even when they take plane, they make sure that they split all the appointment key holders into groups, and then one group will take flight A in the morning. The next group of appointment holders will take the flight in the afternoon. Now, why do they do that? Because even though it's very unlikely, but there's always a risk that the plane may disappear into the sky. And imagine if the CEO, CFO, COO, and all the appointment holders disappear in the one plane. What happens? It means your company is destroyed. Whatever good work it needs to do has to stop. Now, how does that relate to this question? Now, I'm not going to give you a straightforward answer, but what I'm going to suggest is you need to be a little paranoid. So it's not that common in Singapore, but if you talk about the States, in the States, it's actually common for data center operators to have living quarters. They are prepared for some of the key staff to stay overnight and over 1 or 2 weeks. They will prepare the stocks, they will prepare the food, the provisions, and the water, so that you can bunker in. Because you must bear in mind, in some parts of the world, there are hurricanes. In some parts of the world, there are earthquakes. And so when this happens, then you're stuck because the roads don't work. So the best way to be paranoid is you have living quarters and you allow the staff to stay on site for a certain period of time. Now, it doesn't really answer your question because you're talking about the outsourced vendors. For the outsourced vendors, it's a little more tricky, but you have to manage it. And data center operators and even the cloud players, we specialize in one skill. We specialize in doing impossible things. Impossible things, but we will do it. So what I'm suggesting is you are given an impossible task and you will do that impossible task. Now, how to do it, I leave it to you to think about it.
So I'll presume that the data center providers need to work very closely with the so-called outsourced facility management team to make sure that not just team A, team B, maintenance team, but maybe like team A, B, C, D. And these maintenance teams will only go to the few data centers and not cross here and there, just to avoid any further exposures. Now, actually, I have another interesting happenings in the so-called server room. Okay, and we actually have a detection system detect there's a water leakage from the aircon. But however, when they try to contact the aircon maintenance team, the answer is, sorry, they are not the essential services and they couldn't send anybody. So we do see some facing during this period when they hit into some problem. The maintenance team literally cannot go over. So we have some problems. So we actually advise the customer, why don't you get the others providers to make sure that you can send a team, because any aircon leaking can cause disaster to the data center, so the water keep flowing down. Right. So we have this kind of issue that we face, but I think we managed to solve the problem. I mean, the moral of the story here is that do not just rely on one service provider. You need to have multiple and you need to know who are the other service providers that can actually value add to you. Especially there are also many service providers, the maintenance team are actually in Malaysia and couldn't be out. So again, we need to have all this kind of resiliency plan to make sure that not just one provider, but we have various suppliers that we can actually leverage upon. Make friends, I would say, make friends, they'll come and help you.
I absolutely agree on you.
Yeah.
Okay, I suppose Henry has Henry is probably forgotten the question he asked. So
yeah, you probably have to go back to your first slide. But I have a question here from Fabian. Okay, Fabian, let me read the question from Fabian from Keppel. So he mentioned just one curious question. During the festive season, Hari Raya Puasa, did you face the manpower issues during COVID-19 period? And how did you manage that given that some key personnel may be affected?
Okay, Fabian, you're a friend, so you deserve an honest answer. Honest answer, so I'll give you an honest answer. You can only do one thing. You can only suck it up. Sorry, no, really, I mean what I mean. You have to suck it up. The only way you can suck it up is you have to be an asshole. Sorry, I hope everyone here is not offended. If you set the right expectations with your staff and with your outsourced vendors, they will not dare to mess with you. That is why I'm an asshole, because I'm hired to be an asshole. So if I get services from party A, I need to set certain expectations. My children can only go to your childcare center. If anything happens to them, something will have to happen to you. Isn't that the case? Now, if it's your own staff, you may be more forgiving because you have no choice. By the way, I used to work in the Philippines. I used to work in Indonesia. I have this problem as well. During Lebaran, I have no staff. During Christmas, I have no staff, not in the Philippines. Everyone has to go. How do I overcome that? I have to hire some people who are not affected by particular holidays. I have to do what I have to do. And moving forward, I won't be surprised. I have to hire at least a few non-Malaysians as well. Because do I know when they're going to close the borders again? I don't know. I don't. It may happen. I'm not saying it will happen. But I'm saying that if you're a soldier and your only objective is to win a war, then you need to have a very good strategy where you hedge your bets, you minimize your risks. You know that you will lose some casualties. You will. But you want to minimize the risk. So in terms of staffing, in terms of your org chart, that is what I would suggest. But again, is it an impossible task? Yes, it's an impossible task. But even if it's impossible, you have to do it because it's your job. Data center operators are specialized in doing the impossible. So that's my answer to you. But you're my friend. So I'm sure that after this, if you want to give me a call, we can have a very long chat about this. I think we have, are we supposed to wrap up by 7 or do we have more? I'm sorry. Are we supposed to wrap up?
We'll wrap up by 7, but I believe we have some more time for some questions, especially with about 40 over participants.
Okay.
And really want to hear from them, you know, to have questions, especially during this COVID periods. How do we handle these kind of services in order to ensure all essential services can be continued? I believe there are a lot of burning questions because I think when I look at the participants, I was quite very happy with the overwhelming. We have about 80 over people registered for this. Is there any questions from anyone else? I got one question from Yen here. I'm not sure whether it's a question or something he mentioned over here. Let me read what Yen has mentioned.
Sure.
I would say on enabling local supply chain, many times there is a need to look at supporting local. Of course, the local supplier must be of a certain caliber and can fulfill the minimum requirements needed. But how to ensure both sides can appreciate the need towards success?
Okay. Yan, is his surname starts with letter G?
Yes.
Okay, Yan. Remind me to choke you later. No, he's a friend, that's why I can say this. Now, I think what you want is an honest answer. So I'm gonna put aside some pleasantries and suggest this to you and to our other friends as well. You get what you pay for, you get what you chose. If you marry a wife and it turns out the wife does things that you think shouldn't be done, who's at fault? You are at fault. You chose your wife. No one has forced it upon you. In the same way, if you choose a bad vendor, do you blame the vendor? No, you blame yourself. You made a bad choice. The challenge is, how do you make that right choice and balance the trade-offs? There will be trade-offs. If you say that I only have $4, but I want to eat Hai Di Lao, no, it won't work. It won't work. You want to cut your corners, you want the best, it doesn't happen. That is being naive. That is ignoring reality. But of course, you can tell me, just because I have money, does it mean I will get the best? Not necessarily as well. So I think it boils down to the selection. Data center operators spend that much effort and money and expertise to select a site. It can take years to select a good site. In the same way, it can take years to select a good vendor. But I don't want to spend 30 minutes to explain. So just a few suggestions. For example, when I pick a partner, it takes me months. But in fact, the selection process takes place throughout the year. And I think we need to think about how to make that process more holistic. So for example, when I choose a consultant, I would find out who are the consultant's ex-customers. I meet them for lunch. I ask them, hey, how is that person's performance? Did you have a good time? Did he give you a lot of problems? Is he too stubborn? Is he too expensive? Is he honest? I do this. All my vendors, all my consultants, I will take weeks to find out who their customers are and were. I'll talk to them, I will hear from them, and if you are an ex-soldier, or if you used to work with or for armed forces, you have that quality of professional skepticism. Professional skepticism means you don't believe anything anyone tells you. If he tells you have 2N, your first response should be, really? Can you prove it to me? If he says, I've done it before, then the question should be, since you have done this before, can you explain the steps to me? If he says he has the expertise for certain things, then you can ask him, well, if you were able to overcome this problem, then how to explain all these very awkward facts that doesn't seem to gel with what you just said? But in order to do that, you have to know a thing or two about the subject. You cannot go to a crack manufacturer and then you come up with an evaluation criteria where meets my needs, cheapest, I award to you. I know that's a default for many customers, but I think if you're a data center operator, you need to take it a notch further. You need to do more market research. You need to ask the right questions, and you have to be very suspicious. And you may need to have the right carrots and sticks. So for childcare centers that let me down, they usually regret letting me down. But for childcare centers that have done a great job, I treat them as my family. So if you work with soldiers will tell you, always encourage the right behavior, discourage the wrong behavior. Set the expectations before you sign on the dotted line. But exactly how to do this. So for example, when I call for a contract for facilities management, for the ones that I'm personally involved with, I will put them through a technical competency test. I will ask them simple questions, very simple questions. I don't ask the owner of the company, I ask the on-site engineer who's been assigned to me. For example, how much wattage does it take to trip a 32M breaker, single phase? How much does it take? Simple questions. I may ask them simple questions about CP5 1998. Based on CP5 1998 and if you reference to CP5 1988, what does it mean by arm's length? After all, you're managing my data center. You should know. If you don't know, how can it be my childcare center? Am I going to be very confident that you will do what you need to do, that you know how to do it when I'm away? Because you are my first and last line of defense. So it's not just about the competency, it's also about the aptitude and the attitude. A vendor
in view of time, I got one last question here, so that I think we don't want to miss these interesting questions. Sure. Sorry to interrupt you because of the time constraint. We have one, I think it's the last question here. Maybe I can answer together with you later on.
Sure.
The question is from Yong Yin Cheng. The question is, what is your view on SME and or government competing for talents and the notion of insufficient local talents on the market, but majority of the talents ended up in vendor due to prospects and package? I think this has got something related to previous question about Hari Raya and so on, but I will add on after your answers. Then I think we can actually round it up.
Okay. I think it deserves an honest answer. So I will attempt to answer to the best of my ability. You're talking about talent. Where does talent come from? It comes from community. Same as politicians, it comes from community. When you complain that the talent is not good, you're saying that this community is not able to come up with the right type of talent. Now that's a problem. It's a national problem. Let the ministers answer that. But what can we do on our end? If we need a vibrant SME market, and we do, we need to work on talent development, but we also need to pay for talent development. And interestingly, I think you will see a lot of talent going to places like the Philippines, going to Thailand, going to Indonesia, because there are more opportunities. So it's chicken and egg. Number one, I need to develop talent, and that's a conversation I'm very interested in, but interest of time, no time, sorry. Then there's another aspect of talent must be able to find a job. That's another dimension. So as an operator or as an SME, what can you do? I think what you can do is to change culture and to change mindsets and to engage the authorities for conversation. That's why I strongly encourage friends to talk to the likes of SG Tech. SG Tech is a champion of the SME market. They fight for you. So talk to them. Raise your concerns and let them consolidate some of this. Talk to the right parties. But as an individual, while you're doing this, talking to the policymakers, talking to the rest of industry to change organizational culture, to change attitudes. What can you do as an individual? I think you have to do what you have to do, which means that if you can afford to pay and you think it makes money sense, it makes business sense, unfortunately, you need to secure some of them. Unfortunately, it's not just data centers, it's the same thing for cybersecurity. But I will suggest to you one thing. The right person will not leave you because he's being paid more money by another competitor. Because if that's true, if that's really true, then all the policemen, all the nurses, they have to leave their jobs. For sure, there will be jobs that pays better. For sure. I'm very sure of it. I'm very sure of it. I've had staff leave me because they were paid better. But I have staff who stay because they say, Josh, I think you're doing great work. I believe in what the company is doing. Maybe I'm poorly paid. maybe the work environment is not good, but I want to stay because I want to make a difference. Now you can make it easier for them to want to make a difference by treating them the way they should be treated. If you treat your staff like family, if you treat them the way you want to be treated, 将心比心, if you do that, even if you cannot afford to pay them the pay that they want to, you can give them respect, you can give them attention, you can give them dignity, you can give them support, everything except for money. Because sometimes you want to pay, but you don't have the money. I'm saying this from experience because I was stationed in a particular country and I had to fire the entire country team. More than 10 persons lost their jobs, except for me. I'm the survivor because I was pulled back into another country. I have value to the company, so they kept me. But for an entire team, the company decided there was no value. Let them go. Let's be realistic here. Paying staff more is not the answer because sometimes you don't have the money to pay them more. But what you can do is to make them feel at home, is to support their aspirations, is to give them the support that they want to, so that before they find a better job, they feel that, hey, you know, I actually enjoy working here. I actually feel that I'm treated properly, I'm respected, my views are taken seriously. So these are the intangibles you can do, and some do decide to stay, some are attracted because of the organizational culture. And you're attracting those who do this because they love the job, want to do a good job, they believe in the vision of the company. Now, beyond that, changing market dynamics, changing the way Singapore works, I guess that's a conversation that's beyond us.
Maybe Joshua, let me add on so that we can share around it up. So thanks for that. Now, just to keep everybody updated about these talents, project prospects package and so on, I would also agree with Joshua, and I also felt that there are really shortage of data center professionals in the industries. We can see that there are actually musical chairs that people move from one DC provider to another DC providers and so on because of better package, better perspective and so on. Just to let you know that ITE Singapore, they actually started the 3-year diploma courses for the students. Okay, you also heard that NTU and Facebook, they actually have a program to do training on data centers. So actually, particular the IT data center training, where now they're actually starting to train the youngsters. I think 2 years ago, they got something like 50 over students. And all these students are being sent to the DC providers, and some of them sent to the main con to construct and build data centers, and some of them are sent to the end user site. And what they do, they actually go through the 2 years intensive training in the data centers, ready to understand. So I believe we are doing well by doing all the very good education to train all these data center professionals, which we not have it for the last 20, 30 years. So I believe moving forward, there'll be more data center professional competing and so on. And these are the ones can bring better values to the market and so on. So I will not be that worried about, oh, I'm the only one, I'm good, I will command a better pay, but you realize that many of these is going to coming up to compete in the market. I will see that there'll be more true, trained, and competent data center professionals really coming in the next few years. So I believe that be the SME government, we will have a fair share of the data center professional in the communities. Am I right, Joshua?
Yeah, me just add a few final points. Yep. To reiterate, I think ultimately you play a part in the final solution, and if we are dissatisfied, then we can do something about it. So, for example, I'm very dissatisfied with the way things are. That's why I called out NTU. That's why I spoke to ITE, and that's why I'm talking to hiring managers, recruiting managers, and to different ones in our community. We are starting a local chapter of infrastructure masons. So that would champion talent development and staffing issues. At the same time, we are going to, I think some of you may recall, we did a workshop with E2I very recently. And as a follow-up, we're actually going to furnish certain resources. Hopefully it will help you to better understand what data centers are. It will make it easier for those who are uncertain to want to decide to join our industry. We want to immerse you to understand what data sets are, what some of the skill sets. We're prepared to offer certain resources. And if you are a policymaker, if you are academia, if you're an operator, I strongly encourage you to join us. I think on the 1st of July and the 31st of July, we're going to have some discussions with infrastructure masons. And this conversation will cross borders because we have a chapter in India, China, Australia, likely Thailand. And when we amalgamate the voices of the operators and we talk about, is it possible to do, for example, a professional conversion program? Maybe, maybe not. Can we talk about how to make it easier for people to be hired and how to empower them with certain career skills? Now, again, in the interest of time, I can't say too much. If you want to have a conversation with me, feel free to reach out to me.
Okay, thanks, Joshua. So I believe everybody is, the families are all waiting for us for dinner. Thanks, Joshua, really for the effort, because I can see that you'll be going around preparing for this presentation slide. Really, thanks so much. And the Evelyn, the SCS Secretary, will be sending the feedback form to all of you to give your feedbacks about the talk. And meanwhile, just to let you know that since the talk is organized by the Data Center Special Interest Group, we are the group that trying to, it's a platform to connect all the data center professionals, not just DC professional from the provider, but we're looking for DC professional from the end users, from the research, from the university, from the education, from the innovators, so that we can all come in together to network to see how we can actually really help in the changing of the landscape of the data centers, be it for the landscape of the data centers, but also for the talents of the data centers. So please join the members if you want to. You can actually consult Evelyn. Again, we've been sending out the email for you to come for the conference. She'll be able to advise you on the memberships as well as feedback. With this, I think I got nothing much. Joshua, you got anything else that you would give to the audience before we close up?
Okay, sure. We have the Telegram group, if you're interested. We have the Data Center Careers Facebook group as well, if you're interested. If you would like to talk about learning development, actually, there are many ongoing conversations. So feel free to join us.
Okay, with that, I'll not take up so much of a time already. I really want to say again, thank you so much for joining us and have a good evening. Thanks, everybody.